All right, we're recording. Let me get on the PowerPoints. Oh, where is it? There it is. Oh, see, someone came in right when Riley. All right. There you go. There's the digestive system. Remember how I was saying it's like a tube from your mouth to your anus. So, food goes in the mouth, down the esophagus, into the stomach. Then from the stomach, it's going to move into the small intestine. So right here, but all that. Then the food moves into the large intestine, goes through there, and then out. So it's like one continuous tube. So we call that tube the gastrointestinal tract, the GI tract. It's just one tube that goes all the way through. It's shaped differently, right? The stomach's shaped different than the esophagus, and that's shaped different than the large intestine. It's true they're all shaped differently, but it's still one continuous tube. So, yeah. And then there's these things called accessory organs, which are not part of this tube, but they help with digestion. So like your salivary glands, they're an accessory organ. Your tongue, your teeth, those are accessory organs. They help with digestion. And you got 3 accessory organs down here in the abdomen also. So you've got the liver, that little green thing, the gallbladder, and then behind the stomach is the pancreas. So liver, gallbladder, pancreas. We'll talk about those. So let's just briefly go over each one of these parts of the GI tract. So you've got the mouth. Chew up the food, swallow it, it goes down the esophagus. The esophagus is just kind of like a hallway to get the food from your mouth to your stomach, because the stomach's down in the abdomen, right? All this stuff dealing with food is down in the abdomen, but you got to get the food past the thorax, right? And the thorax is taken up by the heart and lungs. So that's what the esophagus does. Just kind of gets the food past there and into your stomach. So as far as like functionality, it doesn't have like a real function. So the food's going to drop into your stomach. So the stomach is going to liquefy the food. That's the main job of the stomach. Sorry. My coffee machine. So the stomach is going to liquefy the food. It turns it into something called chyme. And again, we'll get to that. But chyme is like liquefied food, because we're going to want to suck all the nutrients out of the food. So, you got to liquefy before you can get all the nutrients out. You don't want to leave it as a solid. From the stomach, the food's going to move into the small intestine, and that's all this stuff right here. That's what does the absorbing. And actually, we should stop here and talk about what it is exactly that you want to get from food. So they say that there's 6 classes of nutrients. There's 3 things that we want from our food that are energy, and there's 3 things from our food that are not energy, but we want them. So the three energy sources, you should know this by now.
Carbs, lipids, proteins.
Perfect. I've been waiting a long time for someone to just answer that. Carbs, lipids, and proteins, that's energy. If you remember about those 3, not all 3 of those, one of them is not it's used for energy, but not really. First, one of these three is used for something else first. Which one is different? Carbs, lipids, and proteins. One of those three is different from the other two. Somebody say it. Proteins. Proteins. All right, proteins. Proteins are different. Proteins, your body's going to use proteins to make stuff first. Then, once you've made hair and hemoglobin and whatever you're making, you use the rest for energy. So, yeah, carbs, lipids, proteins. That's the energy that we're trying to get out of food. Then we have non-energy things: vitamins, minerals, water. So we need water, obviously. We need vitamins and minerals to do things. We've talked about 3 minerals a few times in this class. We talked about sodium, potassium, calcium, but there's many, many more. Talked about iron a few times. And then vitamins, there's a class of B vitamins, C, D, E, K. So anyway, that's what we're trying to get out of the food. We don't actually suck that stuff out of the food until the small intestine. It doesn't happen in the stomach. The stomach's just going to liquefy the food, and then the small intestine, we're going to pull all that stuff out. So absorption. This is where absorption happens, in the small intestine. Then the food moves into the large intestine. So the large intestine starts right down here. See where your appendix is? That's where it starts. And it goes up, it transverses, going across, and then it descends, going down, and then it does this little sigmoid thing. The large intestine takes the water back because it's liquid. It's like diarrhea, going in, and it's like feces going out. So you want to take that water. And really, if your body were to eat like really dry food, like if you eat really dry food, your body's going to donate water to liquefy your food. So if you're just sitting there with a bag of goldfish crackers and you're not drinking anything, your stomach's going to give water to that so that it could liquefy it. And your saliva too. Okay, so you need that water back. Yeah.
That makes you dehydrated, right?
Yeah, like if you have diarrhea, that'll totally make you dehydrated. Because you're not your body takes back about 80 to 90% of that liquid because you're getting rid of it anyway. So it's not like you're going to hold on to it. So when you have diarrhea, you're not holding on to any of that. You're not keeping that water. So that's a good way to get dehydrated fast. This is remember how the trachea had like different layers? And the first layer we called the mucosa. Same thing here. There's 4 layers of the GI tract. So this could represent the esophagus. This could represent the small intestine or the stomach or the large intestine. Same 4 layers. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in here, but let's look at 4 layers first. So you see like 1 layer's here. There's a second one. There's a third layer, and then there's this 4th layer right here. So first layer is called mucosa, and then this gray layer is underneath it. So mucosa, submucosa. That third layer, muscularis. It's muscle. And then the 4th layer, we call it serosa. Same, I believe serosa is the same name from the trachea, right? For the trachea was mucosa, submucosa also, right? And then there's hyaline cartilage, and then serosa or adventitia. So anyway, mucosa. Mucosa has three parts to it, right? So that first layer is epithelial tissue because the lining of everything is epithelial tissue. It's underneath that, there's a layer called Lamina Proprium. And if you look inside this layer, you see like these green things. So they're calling that MALT, mucosa associated lymphatic tissue. Inside this green stuff, there's like, that's part of your immune system. Like when we're talking about secondary, second line of defense, right? If you swallow a piece of bacteria and it clings here and it gets through, now busts through this epithelial layer, and now it's in the lamina propria, right? And this stuff right here has phagocytes in it, so it'll go eat it, right? And then the third layer here is a little thin layer of muscle. The reason they have that is because some tubes in your body, like your esophagus, is smooth, right? So if you were to feel the esophagus, if you were to like stick your finger down in the esophagus and feel it, it's all smooth. If you were to do that in the stomach, it's like a little bit bumpy. If you were to do that in the intestine, there's like all these fingers, right? So you'd be like scraping a shag carpet or something. I don't know.
That's disgusting.
I don't know why shag carpet came in there. It's not really a shag carpet, but it's I don't know. I thought of something in the kitchen that I probably, yes. It's like that. It's got these little villi. I don't know what made me think of that stupid thing, but whatever. I don't even know why I have that thing. I think it's to like baste things to put.
The brush?
Yeah.
It's like a butter brush.
Yeah. I don't know.
You could tell your wife does all the cooking.
I don't brush things on things.
Oh, okay. So your wife cooks the whole time.
If it involves brushing, yes, that is her. It's not me. I didn't even make the coffee right. So it looks different, right? And it's because that muscle layer, they call that, if you look at the word, it's called Muscularis Mucosae. It's muscular, and they use that word mucosae, meaning it's part of the mucosa. So the mucosa's got like these three layers: epithelial tissue, lamina propria, and then muscularis mucosae. Is it like vital that you know that for a test? No, because we're on anatomy again. So I'm just kind of introducing stuff to you, but that would be something for lab, right? But not necessarily for lecture. And then you got mucosal glands here in the submucosa. So like there's the gland, and then you see like a duct, and it puts like mucus into here. And then underneath the submucosa, so you see the submucosa, there's just pretty much mucus glands. The muscularis, this is what moves food through your GI tract, right? If you ever hear your stomach growling, or feel it, if you feel your stomach growl, if you feel your intestines move, if you feel stuff moving around inside of your abdomen, it's these layers of muscle. So you've got two layers of muscle. Your stomach has like a third layer, but for now, there's two layers of muscle. There's a layer of muscle running up and down like that. So that's longitudinal, right? So there's a layer of muscle going like that. There's another layer of muscle circling around. And that's what you're seeing. You're like this would be the esophagus. You have a longitudinal layer. You have a circular layer. They're alternating in their contractions. See how, if you look in, I swear to God, this is right next. I didn't plant this. Like you see, like you look inside, and it's, I don't know if you can see it, but it's not, it's like that. It's wavy. It's like a chip or something, right? why is it like that and not completely flat like the outside? That's because of the Muscularis Mucosae, right? And then this thing, just like your esophagus, is layered, right? So we got like a bunch of different layers, right? So that's the same idea behind your GI tract. So the muscularis, the smooth, it's both smooth muscle, the longitudinal muscle and the circular muscle, they alternate in their contractions, and that like pushes food down your body, down your esophagus, through your stomach, through your intestine. Serosa, I don't know. I got nothing to really say about it. I'm gonna let you like look at this, and then I'm gonna back up one slide. A plexus. So this is like how the different nerves go to the GI tract. Well, there's two reasons that your brain wants to send nerves to your digestive system: secrete mucus, and move the muscle. Right. So we've got two what are called plexi or plexuses. One is here, like so. All these yellow things are nerves, right? And there's two places that these nerves are hooked into. One is they're hooked into these glands. The second place is that it's hooked into this muscle. So that's it. So we'll do this bottom one first. Submucosal plexus. Mucus, like mucosal glands. They're hooked into the mucosal glands, and that makes you secrete mucus. Again, we're at cranial nerve 10, but not sympathetic, right? Because rest and digest is parasympathetic. Sympathetic is fight or flight. You're breaking down food. You're digesting food. This is not fight or flight. So same nerves, different fibers. It's a parasympathetic system. Anyway, and same thing, by the way, with the muscle. Right. So also neurons are going down to the muscle layers here, and we call that, I probably already told you, but we call it peristalsis, and that's like food moving through your body. If you were to swallow something, like things get stuck in your throat, and then you always like drink water or something and make it go down because it's uncomfortable, right? But if you were to just leave it there and not drink anything and just feel it, you can feel it. It will, like if you really concentrate on the sensation, it will start moving down. The muscles will push that whatever you ate down to your stomach. And anyway, you feel your stomach growl, right? That's the muscularis contracting. That's your brain is causing we call it the myenteric plexus. So MY is telling you muscle, right? So the myenteric plexus, your brain's making that move even though there's no food in it, because it's trying to tell you, hey, put some food into me. This is what I do when I have food in me. I move the muscles and I push everything around the stomach. Or sometimes, if you notice, you smell some kind of food, or you're thinking about like dinner's going to be ready, we're going to be having this, and then your stomach growls. Like all of a sudden, at that point, you're hungry, right? That's your brain. You smelled food or you saw food. That sent a signal to your brain. Then your brain sent a signal down the enteric nervous system. It sent it to the myenteric plexus, and that got your stomach muscles going, even though you didn't eat yet. But it's like in preparation. And it also stimulated the submucosal plexus. So you're also secreting mucus, even though you didn't eat yet.
Is that what Pavlov was testing with the dogs?
And that's even like, yeah, the classical conditioning. That's the and now it also makes the salivary glands go, right? We call that the cephalic state. Cephalic meaning like brain, right? So seeing food, thinking about food, smelling food, it makes your salivary glands, it activates your salivary glands, although this is not part of this slide. And then it activates your enteric nervous system. So it makes your stomach muscles move and stuff like that. Right? And that's even, so digestion actually begins before you eat. Just when you smell Cinnabon at the airport. Why at the airport? Because I don't know where they sell Cinnabon that's not the airport. Do they sell it at other places? I don't know. I never ran into like a Cinnabon shop.
I don't think I've ever seen it being sold at the airport.
So, do you want to talk about like a
Hey,
high
Charlotte.
caloric? Where?
I know sometimes at Aaron's Donuts they have them.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
But they're like 800 calories. But they taste every bit of 800 calories. I don't know. You know, I think I'm convinced we could taste calories in food. It just, if it tastes really good, it's got like a shitload of calories in it. And if it tastes awful, you can eat as much as you want. I don't think there's any way around it. You know, eating some kind of like really fishy baked fish without, that just doesn't really taste good. I mean, you know that that's like low calories compared to like fried catfish at the gas station. And we're not fooling anybody. It's not fish, fried catfish. That doesn't count. But back to this. So there's the nerve supply to the GI tract. It's through the enteric nervous system. You're sending nerves to the myenteric plexus or the submucosal plexus. Okay. Remember we talked about like the heart and then the pericardium. Then we talked about the lungs and we were calling it the pleural membrane. How there's like a parietal and a visceral layer and there's like fluid in between, but there's this membrane associated with the lungs that we call the pleura. And then there's a membrane we associate with the heart called the pericardium. There's a membrane associated with your abdomen. We call that peritoneum, which I don't even see the word. All right, so it's right here. Peritoneum. Peritoneum. Right, and so it's a layer of it's like a membrane around the organ, and then there's like another membrane, and it's really hard to see with this sagittal cut, but you know it's there. And sometimes this gets inflamed too, so they call it peritonitis. It's really easy to diagnose. Just take your pinky and like touch their stomach, and if they scream, it's probably peritonitis. It's like really painful. But there's 5 different types of peritoneum. So I got them all on one slide, so let me show you. Now I'm going to move back and go through them. And I'll go back to this slide in case you're somebody that writes things down. Let's look at them. Here's one on top. Well, no, let's start with this big one, the Greater Omentum. So if you were to like make an incision down somebody's abdomen, you think like all the guts would fall out. It doesn't happen like that, right? It's one, there's this apron called the Greater Omentum. And so you can't actually see, like, let me go back to this. Oh, you can't actually see all the small intestine when you make an incision. You have to take that, there's a Greater Omentum attached here, and it drapes down and covers all this, like here. Right, so I gotta remove that. I gotta like cut this away and remove it. Then I can see all the small intestine, stuff like that. Right, I can see the stomach here. I can see the liver, but I can't see any of the small intestine. I can't see the spleen. It's hidden here. All that stuff's hidden. So that's the Greater Omentum. That's one type of peritoneum. That's what gives people like a gut.
I think everyone's seen it before on Dr. Miami's Snapchats when he does his plastic surgeries and he like
Really?
cuts the fat off. And yeah, he records his little, belly tuck or whatever the hell it's called.
I'll tell
Tummy
you why
tuck.
everyone's not seen it. Because you said Snapchat. So
Uh-huh.
everyone above 40 definitely doesn't have that. I had never heard of Dr. Miami. I'm looking him up right now.
He's got a Twitter too.
Yeah.
But he records
So
his
probably
little
more
his
people. I don't have any social. Oh, he's on well, I don't know. Is it the real Dr. Miami or is it just
the real Dr. Miami. He's like this little Arab looking guy, but he's like, I don't know, I guess he's Italian.
Oh. Okay, hold on. No. I'll watch that later or maybe not at all. I already just saw like 1 second. Okay, so yeah, he does all this. What does he do? Like liposuction and stuff?
He does liposuctions, tummy tucks, Brazilian butt lifts, boob jobs. He just like, but like the way he does the belly, the tummy tucks, he literally cuts the fat like off the belly and like cuts it like he makes an incision like in the middle of the greater omentum or whatever, like right above it. But whenever he like lifts the fat back before he cuts it off, he takes a picture of all the fat, and like that part that's holding all the guts in will show.
Yeah,
And like
that's
I
it.
didn't know anything about
Yeah,
that until I watched his
that's
videos.
exactly what he's taking the fat from. Although he's just pulling it out, he's not like melting it and sucking it back up.
So if he's doing a butt lift, I mean, yeah, if he's doing the butt lift, then he'll get fat from like the hips and the muffin top, and then he'll pump it back into the butt. But whenever he's doing a tummy tuck, he just cuts the fat evenly and then cuts both sides of the chunks that he just pulled out, and then he'll stitch it back to the bottom, like I guess the pelvic area, and he'll stitch it back, and it'll just be tighter instead of fat, and it'll be flatter. And then he'll have to pull the belly button because the belly button is like not attached to fat. It's like different. It goes through the greater omentum or whatever the hell. So he'll pull it through the fat and like make a new like belly button basically. It's really cool. He looks so grossed out.
I don't know what to say.
You need
I'll
to
say
watch
this.
his videos. It's not even like 5 minutes long.
It's likely that when you take this layer of fat away, it's likely that it will not come back, right? People say, "Oh, you gain all this weight back." You might gain weight, but you're not gonna. People tend to keep it off when you get liposuction. That's for a whole bunch of other reasons, but yeah, that's what they're doing. I don't know anything about the butt though, the Brazilian butt lift. So they want to get the whole butt up.
Yeah. So he'll like pump the butt to make it even. So like some people have like when you get older, your body parts start getting saggy.
Your booty
And
drops.
yeah, and he'll just start pumping fat from parts of your body where you don't want it, and he'll pump it into your butt. Like not into the anus, but like into the cheeks.
To lift it and shape it more. Where it
Yeah,
kind of
and
looks
he'll
like a girl who's been to the gym several times to do squats.
he
Yeah,
does
half of the time
wonders.
them girls ain't real. They
He
just
does
got
wonders.
their butt done.
You should really see like before and after pics of him, like what he does. You'll be like,
Let's go
damn,
look
this
up Nicki
man can
Minaj.
craft. He did her too?
Yeah, Nicki Minaj is.
I didn't know
She's
he
done
did
at
her.
everything. Cardi B, all of them.
They got some big old booties.
Okay, that's a definite sign that I'm old because I don't care. I don't know. Oh, wait. See that one? Falciform ligament? That's the second one. That it looks like the liver here is like two parts. The liver is actually made of like a bunch of lobes, like more than two. But anyway, like in the middle of the liver, there's that thing. It's suspending or it's holding the liver to the diaphragm. So if you were to open all this up, the liver's not going to just fall out. It's being hung to the diaphragm here by this falciform ligament. And then on the other side of this, let me show you this one. Right here is the lesser omentum. It's attaching the stomach and part of the small intestine here. It's attaching it to the liver. So the liver's attached to the diaphragm, the stomach's attached to the liver.
What is it, like cartilage?
Yeah. You know the membrane, I mean, you could, like you see this greater omentum, you could grab it with your hands and just pull it out if you wanted. It's not like, it holds it all there, but it's not like super, super strong. Like I could put my finger in there and I could just break it. But somehow it holds the stomach to the liver. This one's a little bit harder. Like maybe if I grab at that, I'm probably going to rip the diaphragm. But I don't know how to explain it. I know this stuff, like here's another one. Like see, like in between your intestines, you have this stuff called mesentery. It's why your intestines doesn't just all like fall out. Like you can't grab a piece and just pull it, unravel all of it. It doesn't work like that. It's held to each other. But if I put my hand like on one side of that membrane, I can see my hand through it. Like it's totally thin. So that's a third one right here called mesentery. And then you've got one here too. Like behind this colon, this large intestine, there's a membrane behind it and it's holding it. It's attaching it to the posterior wall. So this is called mesocolon. Oh, I don't have a picture of it. But right here, I've kind of told you what each one of these things do. So the greater omentum is that drape that Dr. Miami removes. The lesser omentum is suspending the stomach from the liver. You see here when I put duodenum or duodenum, I mean, this is the small intestine. So it's suspending the stomach and part of the small intestine from the liver. When we looked at the falciform ligament, that's attaching the liver to the diaphragm or suspending the liver from the diaphragm. And then the last two we looked at were mesentery and mesocolon. So mesentery keeps all the intestines together. Mesocolon attaches it to the abdominal wall. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. I don't know. There's your mouth. You've got some, we talked about tonsils before. We talked about the uvula. Do you remember what that does when you swallow?
It's full of mucus. I guess, isn't it there? Like if you put too much pressure on it, doesn't it make you get like that throwing up, that gag reflex?
I'm wondering if it. I think no. I think there's receptors behind that, like in your soft palate.
Well, I don't know what it's for
I'm
then.
not sure. It blocks your nose.
What?
Like when you swallow, this thing moves up, and it blocks your nasal passage. Because you don't want like when you laugh and it comes out your nose, that's the uvula. It didn't do its job.
Oh, okay. So like, but why is it weirdly shaped?
I don't know. It's really shaped on this picture. I'm not going to really go into teeth. There's an opening under your tongue. So you've got different sets of salivary glands. One of them is like here in the ducts, and then there's the opening. And then you've got another one over here, and you got another one like over here. I think I've got a different view of it. Yeah, so here's your parotid gland, and then there's the duct. So it's kind of like over here, right? And then There's the sublingual gland, lingual like tongue, right? So under your tongue. And then the third one's called submandibular gland. So your mandible, right? So it's like you've got one here, you got one here. So you got two down here, and you got one like more on the side. There's some lab where you could like eat different things, like something tangy, and you could activate different glands. But anyway, it's all to secrete saliva. These are considered accessory organs: your teeth, your tongue, and your salivary glands. Your salivary glands are to make saliva. Your saliva has some things that help, aside from just being wet. There's some enzymes in it. There's an enzyme that breaks down starch inside your saliva. There's an enzyme that breaks up lipids in your saliva. All right, so let's talk about swallowing, deglutition. So a bolus, that's what we call chewed up food. So once you eat the food and you swallow it, you're swallowing a bolus, right? So when the bolus hits the back of your mouth, the soft palate, then there's receptors back there at the back of your mouth, and they're sending signals to your brainstem, to the medulla oblongata, and then your brain sends a signal back to your uvula and your epiglottis. Right? Remember, the uvula blocks the nasal passages. The epiglottis, if you remember, that's part of your larynx. That's going to block your trachea. So something closes over the trachea, something closes over the entrance to the nose, and the food goes down the esophagus. That's the pharyngeal stage. Then you have the esophageal stage, because the food now moves into your esophagus, right? So when it goes down your esophagus, you have peristalsis. Remember, peristalsis is the alternating contractions of those muscles, the longitudinal layer and the circular layer. So, there's like the food. The tongue's so large in this one, but the food's moving back. Here's the uvula. It's about to come. See, it goes up here and it blocks, so nothing will go up to the nose. And then here's the epiglottis. That's part of your trachea. And here it is, it closes, right? So the food can't go down the trachea. It has to go down the esophagus. And so here it is in the esophageal stage. It's moving down the esophagus, right? It's on its way to the stomach. So when it moves down the stomach, you have these sphincters in your body. And right here, they've got one here that they're sort of labeling. It's not a really good label, but like right here, it's supposed to be a ring of muscle, like a closed fist. It's supposed to look like that, like your anal sphincter, right? You have a bunch of those through your GI tract. And here's the first significant one. They're calling it here lower esophageal sphincter. It's really, the more common word is cardiac sphincter, right? And it doesn't have anything to do with the heart. I know it's like cardiac sphincter, and then we have like this notion of heartburn. They call this region of the stomach, like right at the top here, where my arrow is, they call that the cardia, right? So this is the cardiac sphincter. It does, when you have like acid reflux or heartburn, it can feel like it's coming from your heart. That's because they are kind of close to each other, like the apex of the heart and this area right here. Or like right here, this is kind of close to the apex of your heart. But anyway, what happens is that like that sphincter opens up, lets the food pass, and then it closes again. Because this in your stomach, this is all acid. You don't want that acid coming back up into your esophagus. The stomach has like a thick layer of mucus. The mucosal layer is really thick with mucus, but your esophagus isn't. Your esophagus has a little bit of mucus. It's got to be like a little moist in your whole body, right? But it's not like this thick layer to protect it from acid. The stomach has it. The esophagus doesn't. So that sphincter, like the acid, I see what I'm doing. The acid keeps hitting up against this sphincter here, and you don't want it to go past, because then you're going to get an ulcer, right? You're going to get an esophageal ulcer. At least you're going to get heartburn, right? Because the epithelial tissue doesn't have any protection. So that's what that sphincter does. It prevents backflow. It keeps the food moving in one direction. So we call it the cardiac sphincter. I don't know why they put this word in the slide. I mean, I've seen it used, but I guess, whatever. Oh, here we go. So there's your stomach. And there's some of the different regions. I don't care if you memorize the regions, the names of the regions. That's just more like FYI. There's the cardia. Here's the fundus. It doesn't really matter. Not for right now what we're doing. Here's like the body of the stomach. And then this region out here at the end of the stomach is called the pylorus. They've got it put into two different regions, but this back region is called the pylorus. So there's like a sphincter here when you go into the stomach, and there's another sphincter before food can exit the stomach. And that's really got a different job. That's not to prevent food from flowing back. It's more to like slow down the exit of the food. You don't want to dump all your food into your intestine. Right? Here's the beginning of your small intestine right here. You don't want to dump food in there. So you don't want to dump food in there because, well, it's still acidic. There's a couple of reasons, really. So you don't want to dump food in there because it's acidic. You want to just put a little bit at a time, because this duodenum does not have the protection either. So, they don't have that. It's just like the esophagus. So if you put too much acid in there, it's going to burn a hole through it. So you can end up with like a duodenal ulcer. That's what they call it. So you keep seeing this word duodenum or duodenum. This is the first part of the small intestine. So this sphincter here, the pyloric sphincter, or they'll call it the pyloric valve, it's not to prevent backflow. It's to regulate the flow out. And another reason you want to regulate the flow out is because the small intestine right here, this is going to absorb all the energy and vitamins and minerals. So you don't want to dump food into there. It's too much, too quickly. Your body won't be able to absorb everything out of the food. And they might as well not have eaten. If you can't absorb the nutrients out of food, then what's the point? And look at the stomach here. There is a third layer of smooth muscle. So you've got a circular layer going around. You have a longitudinal layer going like up and down. And then there's like this diagonal layer, so oblique. So the stomach has a third layer of muscle. Longitudinal, well, it's already 10:30. Longitudinal, circular, and oblique. So the rest of your GI tract has 2 layers of muscle. This one has 3. Do you guys have any questions?
Not so far, not so far.
That's a long recording, huh?
It's just a lot of information because there's not very many slides, but there's more slides with pictures on it, so it's kind of hard.
Yeah, and also I gotta stop. I want to stop in about 5-10 minutes and talk about the exam, which is what people are waiting for.
Yeah, I'm a little upset. I took all them notes last week when we did Wednesday, and now I can't find them nowhere on my computer.
Oh, really?
Nope, I don't know if my kid deleted them or something, but I cannot find my notes that I took all last week.
It's always the kids. Okay. Yeah, so I also want to keep in mind that I don't want to go too far into this because you still have an exam. So maybe I'll just finish with the stomach, right? Once I get the stomach done, then I'm going to stop. So there's an actual stomach. There's the cardiac sphincter. There's the pyloric sphincter. There's the beginning of your small intestine right here. And remember, the purpose of the stomach is to liquefy your food. You want to turn your food into something called chyme. I thought I had a picture of it. I mean, I thought I had the word spelled out. All right. Look, so the mucosa layer of your stomach, like the epithelial tissue, these are all epithelial cells. Like you see them right here. They look like columns. So it's like a single columnar layer of epithelial cells. So that's the mucosa. And then underneath it, like this peach colored stuff is like the submucosa. Actually, no, it's part of the mucosa. Mucosa, Lamina Proprium, Muscularis Mucosae. Here's the submucosa. Sorry. So the mucosa, it makes like pits. Like the lining of the stomach is flat, but there's all these holes in it, right? And that's these holes. And so these cells make different things that are going to be secreted and come out here. And it's right here. So some of these cells secrete mucus. Here they're calling them surface versus neck cells, whatever. Just it's both the same. Mucus cells secrete mucus. Some of these cells are making mucus that's going to line the stomach. Some of these cells are called parietal cells, and they make the acid, hydrochloric acid. So the pH of your stomach is really low. It's like 1.8. And the lower the number, the more acidic something is. So the pH scale goes from like 0 to 14, right? So your stomach's like 1.8 to something like that, right? And so the parietal cells are making this. They're also making something called intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is just this molecule that attaches to vitamin B12. And that's why, you'll see some older people, they swear by B12 shots and they take sublingual B12 and B12. That's because it's not that they're not getting enough. It's that they've got like jacked up stomach. And so their parietal cells are not making intrinsic factor. And if B12 doesn't couple with it, it's not going to get absorbed. B12 by itself won't get absorbed by your body. B12 has to be attached to this thing called intrinsic factor. Right? So if you have something like atrophic gastritis, like inflammation in your stomach, and these parietal cells get all jacked up, you're not going to be making enough intrinsic factor. Right? But the more important thing here is that the parietal cells make hydrochloric acid. Chief cells make pepsinogen. And again, we've got this word that ends with OGEN. So that means it's a precursor. And to activate it, we take off the OGEN. So the enzyme is pepsin. So pepsinogen is an enzyme that breaks up protein. Why is it made inactive? Because let's say that this chief cell makes pepsinogen, like active pepsin, like pepsin. Let's say it makes pepsin. The pepsin's going to turn around and start dissolving the cell that made it, because cells are made largely of proteins. So you're going to make this enzyme, and the enzyme is going to turn around and start breaking up the cell. You want the enzyme to go out here into the lumen of the stomach and break up the proteins that are in your food. You want it to break up a hamburger, not your cells. So what happens is that you make it as pepsinogen. And then when the pepsinogen hits the acid, that acid's going to activate it and turn it into pepsin. Right? And then you got this last cell called a G cell, and it makes gastrin. Gastrin's we'll talk about it later. It's a hormone that like helps things go through you faster. Like it empties your stomach faster. Like coffee makes you produce a lot of gastrin. To give you an idea of like what gastrin does. All right, I'll probably revisit this stomach part, but let's move to what we're going to talk about on the exam. And I feel like actually, let me stop presenting. I'm going to keep recording though. But let me open my chat box. I feel like we talked about some of this stuff. So me writing this is just me thinking. Exam 3, definitely on respiratory. Oh yeah, I remember now, it's coming back to me. And specific immunity. That's our topics for this Wednesday. Unless you want to put some of this digestive system onto it. But I have a feeling you don't. So let's talk about
respiratory. It's easy.
Yeah, well, the types of peritoneum. Maybe what is the function of the stomach, and how does what's the function of the stomach, and how does your stomach perform that function? Like, what's so special about the stomach that it can liquefy food? Well, let's do respiratory system first, and then we'll see. So what were some things with the respiratory system? I feel like we did this last Monday, but let's do it again. Okay, types of capillaries. That's one thing I'm going to ask you about. Maybe 3 types of capillaries. Not just list the 3 types, but what is it about them? Like, where could you find them? What makes continuous capillary different from a sinusoid capillary? So that's one thing. So there's continuous, fenestrated, sinusoid. So that's one question, types of capillaries. Can't even think about any of the other questions. Hold on, they'll all come to me.
Just go through the review. I mean, yeah, go through your little PowerPoint from last week.
I deleted it.
Why?
Because I didn't want it. I got to keep stuff off my desktop, otherwise I get overwhelmed. Types of capillaries. Distributing versus muscular versus elastic arteries, muscular arteries.
Oh, so this is basically like last week's, 2 weeks ago and this week's stuff.
Yeah.
But mainly last week's.
Respiratory and then specific immunity. So
we can talk about how.
Yeah.
We can talk
for
about
last week. Yeah, you had on there the trachea, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Alveolar cells, type 1 and type 2.
Oh.
The laws, factors.
Oh, yeah. Now it's all coming back to me.
Factors, and the factors too. Active process, diaphragm. Those.
Yeah. So far I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 things up here. So the alveolar cells, like type 1 are just regular alveolar cells. Type 2 make surfactant. And surfactant lowers the surface tension of the fluid. That's a little question.
We need all the easy questions we possibly can.
3 laws pertaining to the respiratory system. So Boyle's law. What is Boyle's law? What is Dalton's law? What is Henry's law? So you got those 3 laws. And they're all on one slide.
I wasn't here last week. I didn't watch your I wasn't here that class.
Video. It's called I got 2 videos, or maybe even 1 video. No, I got 2 videos on respiratory physiology.
What other review questions you're gonna be doing?
I gotta post those too. For the filing, I mean?
No, for this.
I'm doing them right now.
Okay.
Factors. What makes you breathe in? That's kind of like something you have to explain. You should be able to explain to me what makes you breathe in. That's related to Boyle's law. So you need to talk about how the diaphragm is going to flatten, contract. When the diaphragm contracts, it flattens out. And that creates more space or a greater volume in the lungs. I'm not muted.
My nurse friend decided to send me a video of her with her friends, and she said 1 mimosa later, and she's out. 1 mimosa after a night shift. That'll put you out.
Forgot where I was now. I was on breathing in.
The
Lungs get
diaphragm
larger,
flattens.
volume of the lungs go up, pressure goes down. Pressure of the volume goes down to a lower pressure than that outside.
Type that.
That's on a slide. That's factors leading to inhalation.
Okay, all right.
Besides the diaphragm, what else makes the volume of your lungs larger? There's the diaphragm, and then what else?
We'll figure that out when we make our study.
I'll give you a clue. It's called costal breathing.
This one's for you, Liz. I'm tapping you on this one.
Your intercostals.
Sorry, I'm over here yelling at my kid.
So 1, diaphragm. 2, external intercostals. I probably spelled wrong. They both make the lung volume larger. So don't just put diaphragm and external intercostals. They make the volume of your lungs larger, which makes the pressure go down. That's Boyle's law. And then that causes the air outside to go into your lungs. I have another question, lung volumes. I mean, what do I mean by that? Tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume. What's expiratory reserve volume? I want you to know what tidal volume is as far as a number. It's 500 milliliters. I don't care about the other ones. I just want you to explain what it is. What's inspiratory reserve volume? What is expiratory reserve volume? These oranges suck because they're not Satsumas. What else? Why do you breathe out?
Is it something with the carbon dioxide exchange? No.
That's what's driving your body to breathe, is getting rid of carbon dioxide. But like, what is it about the lungs that make you, like, exhaling doesn't take any effort? It shouldn't. It just happens. So why does it just happen? Too late, I told you. Mostly because your lungs are elastic. They've got elastic fibers in them. So we call it elastic recoil. It's passive. That doesn't involve any energy. Breathing in, that involves energy. We're contracting muscles. Your diaphragm's a muscle. Breathing out, you're not contracting anything. Not really. If you make yourself breathe out, you can contract, but normally it's just elastic recoil. I want you to know the partial pressures of oxygen. I'm going to write this down, of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. I'm going to write it down. So the pressure of carbon dioxide in your veins is a lot higher than it is in your arteries. And then the pressure of oxygen is higher in your arteries and it's lower in your veins. But if we were going to assign numbers to those, what would those numbers be?
I had all this on my notes. I need my notes.
What's the deal with oxygen in the mountains? Why is it different from here in New Orleans?
It's more pressurized. It's less oxygen up there.
Is it less oxygen?
Well, I mean, being closer to the ozone layer, isn't it like just tighter in general?
The same amount of oxygen. Just, you said it first, the pressure. Less pressure as you go up.
Less pressure? I thought it was more.
Pressure goes down as you go up in elevation.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right.
The amount of oxygen stays the same.
Butters? No. Oh, my mic's not.
Here's another question. I talked about 4 different things that influence how well oxygen sticks to your blood. Because it's one thing to breathe in oxygen, but that oxygen has to get from your lungs to your bloodstream. And then once it's in the bloodstream, it's got to stick to the blood, and then it also has to get off of the blood once it gets to your tissues. I mean, ultimately, we got to get that oxygen to your tissues. Do you remember any of them? There was 4. pH, the more acidic, or like the lower the pH, the less the affinity, the lower the affinity. So the more acidic your blood is, the less oxygen is going to stick to the hemoglobin.
Increase CO2.
That's the other one. Increase CO2. The more
Heat.
CO2, the lower the affinity. Greater the
Heat
heat,
and BPG.
greater the amount of BPG, the lower the affinity.
Type the rest of them. I typed one. I lost track of the other ones.
pH, CO2, BPG, heat.
BP what? BP.
G, biphosphoglycerate.
And what was the last one?
Heat.
What do you mean by heat?
The hotter your blood is, the more your body temperature, the less the oxygen sticks to the hemoglobin.
That's why it's harder to breathe when you're hot, huh?
No, it shouldn't. You should be breathing more, actually.
Yeah, but like you'll be like harder to, I guess, like, so you know how when you're breathing a lot and heavy and like to calm yourself down, you breathe more, and then you slowly start calming down and stop breathing as much. It's harder to do that when you're hot, right?
Is it?
I
don't know.
What is that? I'm waiting for the mailman. That's why I'm outside.
Oh, how is carbon dioxide?
Bless you.
Here, how's carbon dioxide transported? Most of it.
All right.
How's most of it transported?
That's enough.
Is it? How many? I'll go back and count how many questions we got.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 10.
6.
She didn't believe me?
No. 9. I'm getting 9. 10. Oh, sorry. All right. I'm going to add 2 more things, but not about respiratory system.
Whatever you want.
Immunity.
It's your test. Whatever you want.
That's what I want. Functions of antibodies. That's at the very end of the notes. It's like at the end of that chapter. And piece to resistance. How does
What time is it? 10:52. Wow.
Yeah, we're about
It
done.
doesn't feel like an hour and a half's been passed. Or
That feels
2
like
hours.
3 hours.
It felt like 3 hours because you talked the whole time.
Yeah, it feels like 3 hours for you guys. The one that does the talking, time just goes quick.
It didn't take that long. It doesn't feel. It feels less than 3 hours. It feels like an hour. Not even.
So for
really.
this one, for these last 2 ones,
Yeah.
you don't want us to know for like the second one, for instance, there was 2 ports on there. You got the antibody. I got the last one was the function of antibodies, but right above that there was 2 ports. Hold on, my notes are all bouncing everywhere. Hold on. Do you want us to know like the antigens bind to B cell?
Yeah,
B
that's the
cells?
antibody side. But yes, you'll see one slide that talks about antigen presenting cells, binding to T8 cells. The B cell side is antibody. The T8 cell side is cell mediated. So this last question
Okay,
here,
so you want us for the cell mediated one, you want us to know when like the part where you put when a small number of T cells are activated, they form that one right there?
Yeah, that
you know
one.
what I'm talking about? Okay.
Right.
So I finished all your lobsters.
All of them?
Every last one of them.
Oh, wow. Good.
You're welcome.
You don't need that done at the last minute. Like, you need time to study for other things.
You need those done by December 4th. That's in like 5 days, bud.
Oh, yeah. Hey, does anyone have any questions? I'm going to stop recording here, but I'll stay on if you got questions.
No, I'm good.
How
I'm gonna go start studying.